I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Tony Hadley on Gold Radio. Tony, how good to see you. How is life? You're looking radiant and beautiful as ever.
Well, and you too, dear. What can I say? How are you? Yeah, I'm good, Simon. Yeah, good. Everything. Life is crazy. I mean, do you know my one big problem at the moment is time. I cannot believe we're nearly in May. It seems like Christmas was a second ago. You think to yourself sometimes, where do the years are just whizzing by. So, apart from that, I'm very happy and everything's good.
And you're really busy. Have you always sung, Tony? Because you've got such a distinctive voice. When you were a little kid, did you always sing?
Yeah, I was probably quite an annoying kid actually. I used to whistle a lot. I used to also I drove my mum and dad. I was always whistling, like meandering whistling. And I remember my mum and dad, my dad especially, was like, "Will you just stop whistling?" And then I would start singing. But when I was 5, my record that I loved at the time was "My Boy Lollipop" by Millie.
Wow.
So and I would literally jump around the kitchen singing it and everything, and that's the first record my mum and dad ever bought me from the record shop in Chapel Market in Islington.
Were your mum and dad into music?
Yeah, they've always been mad. Sinatra, Bennett, Jack Jones, Sammy Davis Jr., Johnny Mathis, Ella Fitz, that whole kind of Mel Torme. They love that whole kind of swing side of things. And yeah, I mean, they would, they would go and see Anthony Newley. I mean, I remember my mum and dad saying, they went to see Anthony Newley at Stop the World, I Want to Get Off, an amazing performer. And they got on the number 63 bus to come home, and there was Anthony Newley on the bus.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, so they've always been into music, and yeah, it's nice. They were always playing it around the house. It was great.
And what about you? When you were, say, a teenager, what were you into?
Well, I mean, I went to Clark. The school I went to was Clerkenwell Parochial in Islington, and so we had a couple of nuns there. It was quite a high in terms of religious school, Church of England, and we would sing hymns every morning. So we were always singing in the church. And then when I went to Dame Alice Owens, I was in the choir, and
Yeah.
we did Joseph and all those sorts of things. Sang at the Guildhall. So the whole singing side of things, although at the time I didn't think I would ever become a professional singer because I wanted to be a surgeon at the time.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I kind of got into it more and more. And as soon as I got a record player, and that was it, I started buying, Elton John, Queen, Rod Stewart, Roxy Music, Bowie, and just singing along. And then my mum and dad bought me a tape recorder, and I started recording myself singing along to all my heroes. And I thought,
Wow.
oh, well, not too bad.
That is the thing, isn't it? That your voice is so distinctive. I remember the first time I heard Muscle Bound, which is probably the first Spandau
Wow.
song that I knew, and that voice of yours was very different to anything that was
Yeah.
around at the time from a pop music point of view. And so that point of difference is always pretty important.
I think it is. I mean, I'm into distinctive singers. I mean, I was also I trained with an opera singer, Pamela Dodds, a Canadian opera singer, which was amazing for 2 years. So some of that sort of operatic stuff kind of rubbed off. I mean, if you listen to Muscle Band, it's almost like listening to Mario Lanza. We're building fires. It was on. It's a bit like that. And it's kind of weird. Like, even to cut a long story short. But interestingly, when you listen to early Sinatra, All or Nothing and all, it was very kind of precise and so I think those influences were really heavy as an early singer.
Would you say then that you're a bit of a student of music? Because I know every time I see you, your reference points are always quite succinct and things like that in the way that
Yeah.
translates to your voice. Were you aware of other performers, historically, really?
Yeah, I mean, very much. Yeah, I mean, I number one I love singers. I mean, that's the thing. And I remember, for instance, David Bowie, the world of David Bowie. My uncle owned a record shop, gave me a copy of the world of David Bowie. My mum said, "Oh, is that the new Anthony Newley record?" I said, "No, Mum, that's David Bowie."
Uh-huh.
And also people like Freddie Mercury, Daryl Hall, John Cougar Mellencamp. I'm a big lover of American rock music as well. Bruce Springsteen, and but so there's so many influences that. But I never sound like anybody. If I do a Bowie song, sometimes we used to perform live on Mars, which is no easy task. Bowie had an amazing voice. and I always sound like Tony Hadley. I just,
You do. You do, and I think that is a big thing about you. When somebody hears your voice, there is
yeah,
only you that sounds like Tony Hadley. And over the years, you sort of think the amazing success that you had with Spandau and going from things like Muscle Bound, and then I think I've said this to you before when we've met, Tony. Glow is my favourite Spandau song, which is quite an obscure one, which I really love, which is quite sort of disco-ish, really. And I really love that. But then you go through, and then obviously all of the kind of that slightly more croonery style that you ended up doing. And of course, on Gold, there's one song of yours that we always play, Through the Barricades. Now, obviously, Gold being one of those that is so synonymous with you, but still, every single little bit of different genre that Spandau had, it was still Tony Hadley's voice. No matter how much the music changed with Spandau, your voice was still that driving force.
Funny you should say that. I wish a few other people had recognised that as well, but that's another story. Yeah, I mean, I love, as I say, I love singers. So, Simon Le Bon, great friend of mine, lovely guy. When you put a Duran record on, it's Simon Le Bon.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for some reason, there was a distinctiveness of, Phil Oakey, Human League, Midge, Ultravox, all these, Boy George, George Michael, very Dave Garn, Depeche Mode. You put the record on, and instantly you knew where you were.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's what it was always about. And I'm even though sometimes I don't even like the sound of my own voice, I'm kind of glad that it is pretty distinctive,
But then also, sort of post Spandau, the number of different genres that you've done. I mean, you even did a house album. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I like techno. I really like dance music and stuff like that. I did a grunge dance track once, and something in the rain or something I can't remember. But I worked with a few. I worked with Milk Inc. and Mark and Claude in Germany and stuff like that, and the Disco Brothers. So I sort of they would send me tracks with all this wonderful techno kind of stuff on it, and then say, "Can you come up with a few melodies and lyrics and stuff?" So I really enjoyed that. And then being at BCMs, in the DJ box, spraying people with popcorn. That's fantastic. Loved it.
and then, of course, coming right up to date, then, you've now gone into swing, which almost sort of brings a full circle back to your mum and dad, with their influences.
I mean, I love singing swing music. I get a real kick out of it. I just love the nuances and the way you can push and pull on the vocals and stuff. It's a different style because you're not banging it all the time when you're doing the pop stuff. I mean, even stuff, Gold is Gold, Lifeline, it's all pretty heavy stuff, and even my own stuff is normally in the gods as well. Even though I'm making a contemporary album for next year, which is, I have to say, it sounded very good. I was in the studio the other day mixing, and with Gary Stevenson and Mick Lister, it sounded brilliant. And so that's there for next year because I do believe in making new music. I really do. But at the same time, singing the swing stuff, we're doing a big band album ready for vinyl release to coincide with the tour at the end of the year. So it's nice when you sit on a stool and sing Summer Winds. It's just, Summer Wind. It's just like, oh, wow. It's just so beautiful. Really lovely.
And then, of course, you're touring as well. So you've got your Christmas tour coming up.
Well, it's called the Tony Hadley Big Band Christmas Tour, but we're only doing 2 or 3 Christmas songs. so
I am glad.
We don't want to do you don't want a whole night of Tone singing Christmas songs. You really don't. But we will be doing all the classic swing stuff. Then there's an Elvis big band song that I want to do. There's Jack Jones, who sadly died last October, amazing singer. He did an amazing version of The Impossible Dream, To Dream the Impossible Dream, which is, makes me, I get quite emotional when I'm singing sometimes. And I'm not sure what I'm going to be like with that song because it's just hits all the spots,
That's the joy of all music, isn't it? The emotional side of it, how it makes you feel. It would translate to your place.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a similar age, and Spandau were always sort of one of my favourite bands. And like I said, I remember first time hearing Muscle Bound and hearing that voice of yours. and I thought this
Yeah.
is something new and exciting. Are there still things in your career that you want to do? Is there somebody you'd ever like to see? Say, if I could ever do a duet with somebody, who would you have?
Well, I would love to have done something with Tony Bennett, Jack Jones, or Frank Sinatra, obviously, but sadly they're no longer with us. There's a possibility I might be doing Daryl's House. Daryl Hall.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a massive Hall and Oates fan.
Same, yeah.
I got to sing with Freddie and the boys in New Zealand. We did Jailhouse Rock. Me and Freddie were a little bit drunk, and in front of 40,000 people. I forgot all the words. We just made them up as we went along, actually. So that was a tick box because I loved Freddie. Was an amazing guy and an incredible singer. Yeah, I mean, I just think to carry. I mean, every year I keep thinking, is this the end? Is this all going to fall apart? And every year seems to get busier and busier. We're already now booked up for Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, March 2016.
Wow.
2026, sorry. And stuff's coming in for next year, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really cool. What I am trying to do is trying to balance it a little bit more and take a little bit of the odd couple of days off here and there, because the trouble is with being a musician, we're all pretty selfish. All we think about is music. I mean, my wife says to me, do you ever think about anything else? No, I just think about music. And you get self-absorbed, and that's not fair on the people around you. So I'm trying to take a little bit more time off. Yeah.
I just don't think you will, though. Because also the other thing about it is your voice has stayed in really good shape. How do you do that?
Before you go and have a football match, you don't just. I mean, the 70s maybe they did. It was a couple of beers and they shot on the pitch, but now it's a science, and you have to warm up and do all the stretch, and the vocal, the two little chords in your throat are exactly the same. They're two little muscles. So as a young performer and singer, you must look after yourself and really, otherwise you won't have a voice left.
Yeah, it's true. All right, so I've got one last question for you. You mentioned David Bowie, everybody's kind of favourite performer.
Yeah.
I want you to pick, this is a really hard question, so one song, right? We're only allowed to keep one song from his entire catalogue.
I was going to say Wild as the Wind, but I'm not. I'm going to go Aladdin Sane because it's just so kooky choice. And wacky.
Yeah.
And the piano, Mike on the piano, just amazing. I'm just kook. I love all that weirdness. I like a lot of strangeness.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about Bowie is he could be quite strange.
Yeah, it's a really, really great choice. Well, listen, it's always a pleasure to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day, To, and it's good to see you. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
All-time classics.